in the talcum powder ovarian cancer trial team,
Yes.
and this was against Johnson and Johnson between 2016 and 2018. And you all obtain almost $1 billion in state court verdicts. What was that like for you?
You almost can't put it into words. Um, First of all, the talc cases just generally
Mhm.
resonate with me in a way that really no other case that I've handled has been able to.
How so?
Um, it's personal. It's personal for me. Talcum powder was a sort of staple product
Yeah.
in my home, um, in my mother's home, in my grandmother's home, in my aunties and uncles and cousins' homes. Um, you know, there was a real thing in our whole in just in my microcosm
Mhm.
of things of products that I used and companies that I trusted. That was so high up on the list. It was a product that, I don't remember a time growing up never having it or it's not seeing it, or when I was buying and had my own children, and I have boys, but you know, I would, if I had daughters, I would have done the same thing, because this is just what you do. And this is what you've been taught to do. It's part of your hygienic routine. I live in the South. It is hot down here. Powder as a teenager would be in my backpack for PE class. So when I first learned about these cases,
Mhm.
there was a period of just personal betrayal that I had to deal with, because this wasn't just something like another drug that I've never taken that drug. I have sympathy for the people that have taken it and been hurt by it, and I can represent that.
Mhm.
This was very different in that I could literally put myself in the shoes of my clients, because from my usage history and all that, it's not out of my head that I'm out of the woods for anything happening to me because of my length of time using it. So there's a whole personal thing to it. And when I sort of push that out a little further and talk about how my family, how it was, I also knew from such a personal place that that was the experience for a lot of Black families and Black women, all women. But initially, just getting into it, I brought it to it my sort of communal tie to all of the basis for that, and then come to find out what it could do, come to find out all of the active steps to hide that and not say anything, and all of these things. So but there's nothing else I can do in the law that I think that I would say, like, at the end of my career, talc will always be, I think, the the litigation, the one that I think that if there was a calling on my life to be a lawyer, I think it was because I was supposed to be part of that. So when you take into account just all of that history in it, and that adds a lot to, people tell me all the time, especially when I talk about talc and I talk about my clients, e- I get all the time, we can just feel your passion for all of that. We can feel it. It's palpable. You can touch it.
I've heard you speak at seminars, and it was during the talcum powder litigation. I mean, it's still ongoing, but this is sort of like the earlier stages, and it was just nobody, you couldn't hear anything in the room. Everybody was paying attention to you because it did. You could tell that you were all in, and you were completely dedicated to these clients and you had taken that cause so seriously, and it's great to see. I mean, the circumstances are not, but it was just great to see how powerful of an advocate you were and are to these women. So how was it? And some of these women that you represented, didn't, they didn't survive. They died of ovarian cancer. What was that like for you?
Still and forever will be the hardest part of it.
Mhm.
Um, Jackie Fox was our first trial client in St. Louis. She lived in Birmingham, which is about an hour north of me. And I never will forget the first time I met her in person. I talked to her on the phone before. Um, but you know, it doesn't come up in conversation when I'm talking to my clients. I'm not, hey, I'm a Black woman too, sort of thing. We just talk. And I've also been accused of folks not really knowing if you're talking to me. Um, you don't know if I am or not, but I don't think she expected it. And when I pulled up in her driveway and she came out to greet me,
Mhm.
the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, you're so beautiful." And she hugged me like only a mama can hug you.
Mm.
She did not expect to have a lawyer show up that looked like her. And that was a whole thing. Like we couldn't even get into the case for a long time because she had to tell me everything. I mean, I had to know everything about her and she wanted to know everything about me. And it was a relationship that I think sort of just formed on site.
Mhm.
And I've never met anybody quite like her. And, she was at the time of her deposition, she was technically in remission
Mhm.
and was doing well. Could walk around, she was still driving her car. She had a personalized license plate that said Foxy J on the back. And I just, oh, she was so feisty and such a beautiful spirit. And I remember in her deposition, she said so many wonderful things. But I remembered her saying that God wasn't done with her yet and that she planned to be around. That
Mhm.
was in May of 2015. By October, she was gone. Her trial was set for February. And, you can't help but just be mad. That woman still deserves to be here. Certainly life can throw a lot out at us and we're not promised tomorrow and all of these things, but if her dying from that, had she never used that product, she'd still be here,
Mhm.
and so
It's outrageous.
such a beautiful woman and such a beautiful reason to fight. And
Mhm.
she was the first, but she certainly wasn't the last. And in between the women who I went through that same process with, get you ready for deposition. And some of them, we just had to do the deposition because we knew that health was becoming of concern. And part of the evidence in these cases and the proof that we have to show is what she used and how she used it. And that's a whole story.
Mhm.
And that only really they can tell in that way. And So that became sort of the part of it for all of the highs and vindication of a verdict.
Mhm.
I then would switch from that to the lowest of low for finding out that another one of my ladies died. And that's a really, I mean, you can't get further in the spectrum of emotion than that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for as much as, on the legal side of things, the successes and all of that have been so great, but the costs have too.
Mhm.
Especially in just my emotional capacity on this, because I don't just leave it in work hours, or shoot, I don't even have an office to go to anymore, so I can't leave it in another place. It's just here all the time, and it's with me all the time. And so, I am so proud of the wins, because and only really care about the money part of it, because that's the only thing that matters to Johnson and Johnson and companies like them. They don't and won't do anything unless it's going to cost them um, something significant to think about how they want to do business going forward. But as a metric of our profession and what that means and how big that was, particularly at first, and I mean, it's still big, but it took the legal world by storm, I think, back in those initial trials. It was so unexpected. And it was such the right thing. It was the right thing to expose. It was the right cause to be fighting. It still is. But for me, a lot of it is just sad
Mhm. Mhm.
and tragic.